Robinhood is free. And there's no such thing as a free lunch. They're sending those trades, 40% of them, through Citadel, the hedge fund that shorted GameStop stock.
Please join us for our next live stream Sunday, February 7th at 9 p.m. Eastern. We'll go over current events, past guests, and of course, gold and silver news. Once again, our next live stream will be Sunday, February 7th, 9 p.m. Eastern. See you then. Look at everyone, and welcome to another edition of Silver Bullion Television, SBTV. I'm your host, Patrick Vieira. As always, if you are new to our channel or if you haven't already done so, please do subscribe, hit the bell to be notified of new updates, and give us a thumbs up if you like what we do. We truly do appreciate your support. Our guest today is Lynette Zhang, Chief Market Analyst at ITM Trading, a full-service precious metals firm specializing in gold and silver bullion and rare coins. Lynette has been in the markets since 1964 in various roles, including as a stockbroker and banker. She's also the host of the popular YouTube channel, ITM Trading Inc., which educates people in the area of financial knowledge and wealth preservation. We're delighted to have Lynette as a return guest. It's time to saddle up and silver up again for Lynette Zhang. Lynette, welcome back to SBTV. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Patrick. I'm so happy to be here today. Thank you for having me back.
We're glad to have you back. Really do appreciate the time once again. You know, Lynette, our interview with you still holds our highest viewership, and that interview was about the bug being cover for a financial reset. Now, more than half a year later, is your opinion still the same, where what we have going on with the bug is a cover for financial reset?
Absolutely. Actually, I'm probably more convinced about it now than I was then, but that is not something that I can absolutely positively prove. So, but it just seems awfully convenient. Awfully convenient.
Moving forward to today, you know, what we see going on with things like Robinhood, Reddit, GameStop, is this awakening of sorts part of the process for an economic or a financial reset?
Well, really, it should be pretty obvious to everybody that, okay, here's where you hear my hesitation, is you always have to look behind the curtain. So on the surface, this definitely looks like an Occupy Wall Street movement gone, to technology, and nobody was expecting that. So the hedge funds that shorted or sold, which means they sold stock in GameStop or many other companies that they do not own, right? And there are no limitation to losses when you put in that short position. And it does seem, at least for a moment, that Main Street is kind of winning. But that is indicative of a transition of the entire financial system. But there's a lot more to this than just that.
Okay, what else is going on?
Well, we were talking a little bit earlier, and funny, I was working on a piece around the Robinhood to begin with, and Robinhood sends most of its trades through Citadel, which is a huge hedge fund that shorted and had something like, don't hold me to this, but something like 138, or was certainly right in there, to create 138% short position of GameStop. So in other words, 138% more of the stock was sold than actually even exists, which they do it through leverage. Because in theory, anyway, and clearly this has blown the theory out of the water, but in theory, they were borrowing the shares of stock to sell. And then if they push the price down, then they buy those shares of stock back, and that's how they would make their gains. But the interesting thing about this is that, Robinhood is free. And there's no such thing as a free lunch. People believe it, they want to believe it, but these guys are doing it for free. No, they're not doing it for free. What they're doing is they're sending those trades through 40% of them through Citadel, the hedge fund that shorted. I'm sorry, it's very complicated, but the hedge fund that shorted GameStop stock. And they've also worked together in the past before Robinhood even came into being. And then that's how Robinhood makes their money as well. So, of course, how many times has GameStop stock been stopped today or trading halted? I think 5 times the last time I heard, before we came on here. So we'll see how many more times. And you cannot open up any new positions to buy that stock. You can only close out or sell the positions that you already have. So if Robinhood was really created to, help the little guy, please tell me how that's really helping the little guy. And the excuse that we're hearing when we listen to the talking heads on Wall Street TV, but they're not inaccurate in this. This is actually true, is that what this ultimately will do is hurt the pension funds, the other retirement funds, so IRAs, 401ks, because what you have in there are institutional investors, which are large managers that buy and sell stock for the people that put their money into these kinds of places. So the system is definitely irreparably broken. But what I also find super interesting, this is so interesting, Patrick, I can't stand it. Let's go back to September of 2019 when the money market, repo market exploded, right? And that was really the beginning of the end. And I think I even came out and said, this is it. Well, the rules were changed in 2020 to allow the hedge funds, if they got approval, to borrow funds directly from the central bank. So up to this point, and part of the problem with the repo market was that those hedge funds borrowed money from the banks who borrowed money from the central banks. So it was indirect, okay? They were still getting ultimately the money from the central banks, but they were going through the large commercial banks. Well, I pulled up on DTCC, which is the custodian, as you know, of every fiat asset on the planet. They're actually the legal registered owner of all of, if you bought a fund or an ETF or an individual stock or a bond or anything, they're actually the legal registered owner. We've talked about that, and there's lots of studies on that. But I went in to their spreadsheet this morning on who was approved to do that. And there was Citadel, which is the one that's linked to Robinhood. And they say, now I haven't been able to dig deep enough to find out if this is true, that the founders of Robinhood used to work for Citadel and then one other large hedge fund like that. You see how complicated and convoluted it is? And it's really this incestuous pie, but it's not a surprise that Robinhood would say we're not going to let you buy those stocks anymore. You are not in control.
Yeah,
and
that
so
that
much
was
as they want to say that it's, I'm sorry, but much as they want to say that it's a rising for the little guy, I'm not really so sure. I'm more sure that it's the little guy that's going to end up paying for this in the end.
yeah, I have to agree. It sort of seems like that. Something's amiss with what's happening right now, and it kind of leads me into even with the equities markets, let's say they're increasingly being manipulated either by forward guidance from the Fed, big names lending their name as a type of buying credibility for SPAC stocks or big names tweeting to help move the markets also. So we seemingly fully, just about fully disconnected with the true economy, with any type of price discovery.
Well, 100%. But you know what? That's actually been true since March 9th of 2009, when the Fed went in and said, we are going to, I mean, overtly, they weren't hiding it anymore. I mean, before that, it was hidden. They were still managing the market, but now we're going to manage the market. And there's so much liquidity. They were so afraid that okay, their theory is, you'll have to forgive me, I'm a little hyped from all the research, but the theory really was in past crises that they hadn't done enough, that they needed to put more money into these markets. And 2008, they said, oh, if we had done more. So they really blurred. I mean, price discovery, I was there in 1987. After that, they created the plunge protection team. So really, market manipulation has been going on forever. But since 2009, they have overtly put blinders on any real investment. There is no good price discovery, period. And there hasn't been since 2009. Absolutely. And we talk about all of the liquidity in the markets, and what they've pumped into the system so far makes what they did in 2009, since 2009, I should say, look like chump change. And that has created, and keeping interest rates at zero, which is actually called financial repression, one of their tools to force real investors out on the risk spectrum, take on more risk, because so all of this, you can turn around and point the finger back to the Fed.
Getting back to that word reset, when people hear talk of that word reset, what are we resetting into? I mean, what's the end game or what will happen along the way?
Well, honestly, everybody should be aware that we are already in a surveillance economy. And your data, your information is the new, market. I mean, they sell all of these high tech companies. Now, interestingly enough, asking me that question, we all know that we're going into digital currencies, and specifically I'll go to CBDCs, so central bank digital currencies. And I was just reading a report from pretty sure for the Bank of it was either the IMF or the BIS, one of those guys, either the International Monetary Fund or the Bank for International Settlements. It's kind of one and the same. And they actually were talking about on central bank digital currencies, and they were talking about the costs associated with creating that, and how they would offset, or how they could offset the costs, so that to the end user, meaning you guys, everybody out there, and me, that they could actually sell user data.
Okay.
I mean, Patrick, forgive me on this, but, in a full surveillance economy, once everything is digital, once they get you to hold all of your equity, like say in your house or any other equity that you have in your car, in your clothing, and, look at the World Economic Forum, you will not own anything and you will be happy. Right?
Yeah.
And in a full surveillance economy, then the government, it's time for you to pay your taxes, they can just pull that money out. You don't have an option, oh wait, let me pay it as I want to, or what have you. In China, if somebody jaywalks, by the time they get to the other side of the street, the fine has already been pulled out of their account. And for central banks, right now, it gives them instant and immediate control of policy. So right now, they issue policy and it goes through the banking system, and it takes 18 months on average for them to know if that policy is working or not. But once we're in a central bank digital currency and they want you to spend money and you're not cooperating, well, they just go into more deeply negative rates so that you watch your principal evaporate and you go out and you spend that money. So it's another form of that financial repression, which is disgusting. I mean, it's beyond disgusting, and it really upsets me a lot.
Okay, well, I hope my next question doesn't disgust you even more, but we're hearing all familiar names here: IMF, BIS. Janet Yellen, new Treasury Secretary. Can you tell me what you think the good things are about having an ex-Fed head as being the Treasury Secretary, and maybe what the bad things might be?
Oh, okay. Because I was going to say, what a perfect candidate for the overt merging of what's supposed to be a private central bank and the government. Because in essence, what you have is modern money theory without actually admitting that you have modern money theory. I mean, who knows the Fed as far as being a Treasury Secretary better than Janet Yellen, who was the head of the Fed after Bernanke.
Yeah.
And she said, we are going to go big. And of course, that means print lots and lots of more money. But, and be careful for the UBI, Universal Basic Income, because at first it's going to seem great. We're getting all of this money for free, but I'm going to go back to, there is no such thing as a free lunch. And the cost to the individual to go along with this and allow it is, it's not a price that I'm personally willing to pay. That's why I own physical gold and silver outside of the system. And if you listen to the rhetoric, I know that's another reason why a lot of people have been flying to Bitcoins or cryptocurrencies. But if you read a lot, since 2017, but I'm talking about last week, the biz coming out and saying, Bitcoin can be irreparably broken, and Christine Lagarde over at the ECB, he made a face, but coming out, and saying, well, this is, how illicit activity happens is through these cryptocurrencies. I maintain on the Bank for International Settlements money flower, there is a teeny weeny place for private cryptos, but it's a teeny weeny place. They are not going to give up their money monopoly. A much larger area is on the commodity money. In other words, physical gold and physical silver. And physical gold and silver in their flower is the only money that is completely peer-to-peer, universally accepted, and outside of the system. So
Okay.
that's where I hold most of mine, because I don't want it in the system.
Yeah, we've always been saying you need options. Maybe one foot in the system, one foot out of the system, but you have to start giving yourself options, especially when we're hearing people like Janet Yellen, Christine Lagarde, and even the IMF managing director Kristalina Georgieva, all wanting us to spend, and take on debt. Why do they want us to spend in a time when jobs are limited and people are hurting still?
Because, that's, in theory, that stimulates the economy. We're not producing anything because, as you have said, and most people know, most of the world is out of work or sequestered. So, we aren't creating anything. So inflation, they're going for that inflation because that passes for growth. If they can make that banana cost $20 in the GDP numbers, that passes, inflation passes for growth. It has for a really long time. You
Okay.
know, is that really growth? No, it just means everything costs more, but wages never, the average wage never, ever keeps up with inflation. Never, by design, by design. But the rich get richer, right? Those at the top, this K-shaped recovery, I mean, it's really disgusting because you know who's going to end up paying for it at the end. And it's the ones that are already up at the bottom.
Do you think this time though they will actually get that inflation? And if they do, where do you think it will really start to manifest where we will truly see it?
Well, number one, they have been getting inflation, but they call it reflation. So as long as it stays in the, hello. As long as it stays in the stock market, the bond market, the real estate market, the derivative market, you know, as long as it stays where they want it directed, that's not inflation, that's just reflation. So that's where a big chunk of the money inflation has gone. But I task any viewer or any listener to look at their personal, you know, do you remember what you spent on anything back in 2008? Is it cheaper? Is it the same? So is it just a little bit more expensive? No, it's a lot more expensive, and it's compounding. So the fact that they say that they haven't hit their 2% target is garbage, frankly, because how many people are getting on an airplane? So let's make sure those airplane tickets and those concert tickets, the things that nobody's using that are dropping in price because nobody's using them, those are in the inflation number where you've got food and energy and, you know, education and medical and insurance, and all those things are rapidly inflating. But hey, food and energy is volatile. So we're not going to look at that part of the equation. When we look at the monetary velocity chart, which I just did a couple days ago, and what we're seeing is, I mean, a massive dumperooski. I mean, down at levels, I mean, significantly worse than the Great Depression in 33. But we've also seen a very sharp incline. Now, whether or not that incline continues, I'm paying close attention to, and all of our viewers and listeners should, because I think that's going to be, if you said, well, what one graph should I look at to see what's coming? That would be the one, because that measures the speed at which money changes hands. So once we go to universal basic income, where everybody is getting a check for $2,000 or $4,000 or whatever it's going to be every month, then I think you will see that go up in a pervasive way. And I think you will definitely see, you know, prices for the goods and the services that we use every day escalate even faster. And that to me is most likely to be the start of the actual hyperinflationary event. But we are seeing a very strong jut up right now. We've had those before. That's just all the stimulus checks, right? Which so many of them are going into Robinhood, full circle. I mean, that's a lot of what has enabled that kind of behavior and that kind of activity. If there's no means testing, what do you think that's going to do? In other words, the previous stimulus, you know, you had to make $75,000 a year or less. And, you know, so if you didn't, then you didn't get it. But now, if we go to UBI and there's no means testing, that means everybody's going to get it. And if you're comfortable that you're going to get it every month, well, you're much more likely to stop saving and start spending. So that's why I think that's what we'll see and when.
Yeah, because I was going to ask, that kind of leads into excuse me, when you look at history and nations when they run into a bit of inflation, hyperinflation, what happens is they bring in a new currency once the old one has hyperinflated away. So is this also, or could it also be part of the game plan where they want that inflation, maybe hyperinflation, to bring in these central bank digital currencies?
100%. And they have to get that because the debt level, it's not that they're unsustainable, they're not payable. And they haven't been payable in a long time. And the only answer they have is more of it. And something really interesting, though I'm not done with my research on this yet, because I said to myself, okay, we've got these central bank digital currencies coming out, and you've got about 80% of the central banks that are examining it. China's actually rolling out programs and testing it. But what justifies their creation? So in other words, what is backing the central bank digital currencies? And that was actually really hard to find I can't even count how many documents on it that I read. And so I'm not done yet, but I finally found a little snippet where they said that government debt, like the current system, would back the central bank digital currencies. Well, we're already at nosebleed levels. Yeah. So what does that mean? They have to get rid of that debt. That's what the hyperinflation is really about. That and loss of confidence. When the public finally loses confidence, when they're beaten and battered and bloodied, and right now, watching what's happening with the whole Robinhood thing, because central banks are 100% in a very, very small little corner.
I mean, getting back to that Robinhood thing, what's your take on what happened with silver? Do you think they really did enter that silver market and start to push up silver prices?
I think yes, I think that is definitely part of it. And I hope so, except that you're looking at silver contracts rather than the real physical silver. But yeah, I think if enough, and I'm not, when you look at how messy all of it is, personally, I am not convinced that that's all about the little individual that got that $1,200 check. I think there very well is most likely some other Wall Street entities in there doing a lot of those manipulations myself. But could they? Yeah, until they stop it, right? Until they do trading halted, or nope, you can't do that anymore. Well, wait a minute. If you're supposed to really be for the little guy, then why are you disallowing anybody to, continue to buy in? As insane as it is, but it's all incestuously interconnected. And the central banks are, pardon me, damned if they do and damned if they don't. Because the more free money they create and the more stimulus that they hand out, that's what's creating all of these dislocations. How long can these dislocations last?
Yeah. Central banks damned if they do, damned if they don't. Jerome Powell, do you think he would ever be strong enough or have the will to raise the Fed funds rate or interest rate to 5, 10, 20% if we start to see this inflation kicking in?
No. What did they do? They already told us we're going to let it run hot. So now, instead of that 2% being a target, we're going to let that be an average. So now when inflation goes above that and keeps going, they can say, well, but look we've just had, 10, 11 years of sub 2% inflation. We've got to let this run. And yeah, they're really behind. They're done. I mean, I'm sorry, they're done. They're out of tools. And everything else that they're doing just creates greater and greater and greater dislocations. This will end badly for most people. And that's why my mantra: food, water, energy, security, barterability, wealth preservation, community, which is, arguably one of the most important pieces of it, as well as shelter. we need to be as independent and self-sufficient as we possibly can be, because what we have ahead of us makes what happened in March and April look like nothing, look like a walk in the park. And
Yeah.
that hasn't been that long ago. I mean, I hope people remember. I think many forget, but I hope they remember.
Yeah, that's why we always say, be a blessing, not a burden. Do what you can, help out wherever you can. But I started off this interview by asking you if the bug was part of the reset. We went into hyperinflation as being part of the reset. And I want to double down here and ask you if the necessity of creating a divided nation, even a divided world, is this type of division also a necessity for that global reset?
I don't know that it's an absolute necessity because confidence is the key. But when you divide people, then you're distracting them. And when you look at the times in history, because there's lots of them, when you have a currency reset, one of the things that you have is a lot of chaos. And so you're looking over here while they're doing this over here. And also, if we are divided or if we are segregated, like we are in our homes, and like I was telling you, I'm being cautious, I'm being careful, because I know this disease, COVID, is real. I know that it's real. Unfortunately, I know people impacted by it, and even some people that have died. So I know it's real. But if we're sitting in our homes and we're not going to the parties, or we're not going out and spending time with our friends, which means we're just communicating over the internet, which is, I mean, we all know that they're capturing everything that we say. And, they have those bots that can pick out keywords. But so maybe if I'm going to be perfectly honest with you, there are some things that I won't say for that very reason, right?
Yeah.
So they've made it a whole lot harder to communicate at a true intimate level where you can come together and make a difference. And hey, if everything is digital and they don't like your politics, that's a button push. If you're depending upon them for your money to live, that's a button push. You better have physical gold and physical silver outside of the system, because you can always, history has shown it, this isn't going to be different. You can always convert the physical silver and the physical gold into any currency, and therefore, and any service or any good. The same
Yeah.
cannot be true for the fiat.
Okay, Lynette Zhang, before we wrap up, can you tell the viewers about ITM Trading?
Yes. Well, we are a full service physical gold and silver dealer, but what we really do is specialize in custom strategies. Because look, unless you are well studied, or even me, I've been studying currencies and currency life cycles since 87. You need to have a plan right now to survive this, and potentially even thrive through it and be better off on the other side of this, because that sharing economy is not going to be very friendly to you. And so that's what we really do at ITM Trading. We are keen on education. So as you know, I have my own YouTube channel, well, ITM's YouTube channel, and not giving away too much. We're about to broaden the offering to help people really survive and thrive through this. But we have a plan, and that's what we like to execute. It's custom, so because everybody's circumstances, goals, and what they have to work with are different.
All right, Lynette Zhang, we truly do appreciate what you as well as what ITM are doing, and we wish you the best for 2021 and onward.
Thank you, Patrick. And I actually, and we also appreciate what you're doing. It's all part of the community, because my favorite question is, how many times can you be lied to when you do not know the truth?
Thank you again, and let's do this again soon. That was Lynette Zhang, the Chief Market Analyst at ITM Trading. For more of her insights on the global economy, please visit her website, itmtrading.com. If you like this video, please hit the like button and subscribe to the SBTV channel to be updated on new content. Do also check out the SBTV podcast on iTunes and Spotify.